Okay, Peter, it's Mo. So you hear us okay now?
I hear you perfectly.
Okay, so first of all, we cannot thank you enough. We wish you were here, but your story was done unbelievable and more effective on us. I mean, I feel emotional right now just of what you are doing and what you've done, but to share all the things that you have through your research have gathered and information that continues. And it isn't overwhelming, the continued story and how much deeper this goes and all the things that we know, and that we have people like Peter, people out doing this research continually. And he is right in one thing, that the knowledge is in this room. The knowledge is in our crew who's not here with us too. But we got to keep getting the message out. We should, in every newsletter, things we don't do are saying that give us your knowledge, give us your information, anything that you may have, because people like Peter want to have this knowledge. I mean, all the things that we knew from when we were in a hospital on a ship, or we were wherever, the things that we learned, and us being together with these reunions, what we've learned. And tomorrow, what you'll see with Matt Scowls in True News' documentary they've done for us is, I hope many of you've seen it, but I hope you're anxious to see it again sitting amongst us so we can share that together. But right now, we have the great opportunity to ask Peter any questions. So I hope somebody has some questions. I'll bring the mic to you if you do. Do we have? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. You go ahead and say something.
Okay, I just wanted to make stress one point, and that is because of the guilty secrets of, that America had, and the fact that Israel knew those guilty secrets, it could it very effectively had a hold over America, and it's had that hold over America ever since. And so if you want to wonder why America has never put proper pressure on Israel to relax its anti-humanitarian stance against the Palestinians, its imperialistic stance, you might say, there is one of the explanations. Anyway, let me answer any questions, and I'll add a few points at the end if I have time.
Yes, Peter, Gordon Dempsey. This take on James Angleton.
Say again?
Best take on James Angleton, if any.
James Angleton figures in a very big way in my book. What I've tried to do is to identify who the key people were in America and Israel who were behind Operation Cyanide. And of course, James Angleton figures in that in a big way. The other person in Israel would have been Meir Amit, who was the head of Mossad, who came to see McNamara just before war broke out. But there were other people in the background in America, like Walt Rastow, who was the security advisor to Johnson, and who, by the way, I think is still alive, so I've got to be careful what I say. They were plotting and planning behind the scenes. And I heard that, by the way, from someone connected to the CIA. Angleton was had two roles in the CIA. He was very senior. He was number 3. He actually was in charge of counterintelligence, which was to combat spying by the Soviet Union on America and vice versa. He had many failures in that regard, but his other job was to be head of what they called the Mossad desk. He was the link with Israeli intelligence. And so he was fed an awful lot of very useful intelligence from Israel that made him have a very high reputation in the CIA. And he was a key guy facilitating what I've been talking about, but not the only person, because it wasn't just the CIA. You have an organization called the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, which very often doesn't get very much coverage in the media, but it is in fact a bigger organization than the CIA, and in some ways more powerful because it has at its disposal the resources of the Pentagon and so on. So I'm going to try and put it together as much as I can. It's like a big jigsaw puzzle with a lot of the bits locked up in various safes. But I am getting to the point where I think I know what was going on. And it's not a straightforward story. And I'm so glad that Mo was saying, you know, we've got to keep looking for the evidence. And I'll give you a couple of simple things, if I may, while I'm on. And one is that on the day of the attack, one of the things I did was to look at what was happening to Moshe Dayan, the man who the CIA identified as being behind the orders for the attack. Moshe Dayan never appeared in the war room in Tel Aviv or in the one in Haifa. He was actually traveling around Israel in his helicopter. He ended up at lunchtime, around about the time of the attack, having a picnic in the Hebron Hills with people he met. He therefore had made himself deliberately absent from the control rooms where in fact the decisions were being made. Meanwhile, in the control rooms where Yitzhak Rabin, who was the chief of staff of the military, was based, there was total confusion. Yitzhak Rabin says in his memoirs that he was receiving calls from the south of Gaza that there was shelling going on the town of El Arish, and implying it was coming from the Liberty. Now that story, of course, can't be true because you had no ability to do that. What was actually happening is that someone was feeding information into the war room that would justify the planes and the ships going out to attack you. So many people who were involved in your possible downfall, thank God it didn't happen, would not have known the full story. They were just obeying orders and given false reasons for them. Anyway, another question?
I have another question for you.
Yes, Mark.
This presentation that was made that you take for us, is that available some way for us to put that on?
Yeah, well, Mark who's with you has got a copy of it, and you're very welcome to pass it around because, and also, as I've given you my email address, I'm very welcome for people to email me with questions and information. I really do want information. Can I tell you a couple of other little stories? One is, it's often said, you know, that the Liberty wasn't spying on the Israeli signals because there was nobody on the ship that was really devoted to interpreting those sort of signals. They didn't speak Hebrew. Well, of course, there were one or two people who spoke Hebrew. But the main point is that by this stage, in 1967, America had developed a computerized transliteration system so that the Hebrew script could be actually turned into Roman script and sent back for translation. And of course, you had on board a satellite dish, the moon bounce, which would enable that material to be very quickly fed back to the NSA. So I don't buy the view that you were not listening into Israeli signal traffic. I think you probably were, although you may not have known it. And so a lot of intelligence was being fed to the NSA. The dangerous thing from the point of view of those who are involved in the Operation Sinai plot is that this was bypassing the normal signal links that would normally, ordinary analog stuff would go through. And so that it could not be stopped and it couldn't be impeded. So I think in the course of that stuff going through to America, very interesting stuff was being fed that was a great embarrassment to the people behind Operation Sinai and, of course, to the Israeli military. One of those things is the fact that that America had supplied Israel with special equipment to fake signals going between Egypt and Jordan, allowing Israel to imitate Egyptian military people, including possibly NASA, telling Jordan that the war was going very well and they should join in, which of course they did. So if that information had come out, that in fact American equipment and personnel were helping Israel create a pretext for attack on Jordan, and for Jordan to in fact erroneously attack Israel on the basis that the war was being won, that would have been another embarrassment. So the point I'm making here is that there are a number of reasons why you were a threat, not just one. You were a threat, you were a possible justification if you were sunk for a war on Cairo and other things. Hi.
Peter, this is Gary Brumman. We spoke briefly in Norfolk. I'm not sure you remember me. But I want
I
to
do.
thank you for all that you've done over the years in the research and everything. And certainly wish you were here with us today in the flesh.
Yeah, I'm very sorry about that. I had it all fixed up. I've still got a voucher for my air tickets, so I'm going to use it one of these days to come over. So we'll try and get together then. Could I make one point, by the way, that just to which I think I probably should have made much more strongly in the recorded thing I did. Because Israel knew what America had been up to and knew the secrets behind Operation Sinai, it had a hold over America. When the cover-up began, Israel was in a position to completely blow a hole in the Johnson administration's attempt to claim that it was not involved in the Six-Day War. And in fact, that hold has continued ever since. And in my view, it's a very significant reason why nothing has ever been done by Israel, sorry, by America to do something about the Palestinian problem. But beyond that, of course, it's the reason why you guys have never had full, have never been able to get anyone to have a proper inquiry. I do reiterate that one time I still live in hope that even maybe the Biden administration might be persuaded to open the lid on some of the secrets, but we'll have to wait and see on that one.
Good afternoon, Peter. Phil Turney.
Hello, Phil.
How you doing? We met back when Gary was talking to you, but my take on all this is so many people were overlooked for the great contribution to saving our ship. And one in particular is Joseph Tully, Captain Tully of the USS Saratoga. And you know, he sent the aircraft from help us, and he did not really take orders from anybody. He just sent them. So at one of our reunions, I forget how many years ago it was, a lot of years ago, Captain Tully was still alive. He had throat cancer, and he was on his last leg. But that man was ruined. His life was ruined. His family's lives were ruined. They got rid of him. Mid-cruise, and he had a lot of things to say, but he was a broken man over this, and he cried at the reunion and said, I tried to help you. I tried to help you. It was very, very sad how many lives have been affected by this unspeakable, filthy, dirty cover-up and the murder of my shipmates and their families. Because when they murdered those young men, they also murdered their families, and it's very, very fruitful. And the first reunion I went to, this room would be packed with survivors.
Yeah.
Now we're very thin, but we're still fighting. So my hats off to you. God bless you, and keep up the good work. And I think everybody here is just thrilled to see you and be able to be part of your story, telling our story. God bless you, and I know that Matt Scal is very happy that you got involved with his film, Sacrificing Liberty. I will say this, out of all the years I've been around, Sacrificing Liberty is the best thing that ever happened to USS Liberty history. Again, thank you, Peter.
Yeah, another one here. So, Bernie, here's the mic.
Hi, Pete.
Hi, Annie.
Do we correctly assume that the reason Operation Sinai wasn't fulfilled and are all the schools that we're talking about, was because the ship did not sink?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Do we assume that the reason Operation Steinway and all this leverage that you referred to
Yeah.
was because the ship did not sink?
Yes, the intention, the plan was whether it was sort of a plan B or a plan A, I don't know. But the plan was that you would be sunk. Very similar to the Operation Northwoods one. If anyone had stayed alive to testify that it was not the Egyptians that were attacking them, the whole plan would not work. So it had to be the case that you all had to die. And that's why the life rafts, of course, were shot up. You were not allowed, you're not supposed to survive. And I mean, it's a hypothesis, but I think it's a strong hypothesis that the receipt of when the 6th Fleet picked up your signal, which was on open circuits, in other words, it wasn't encoded, so anybody in the area could listen into the signals, not just American ships, but any others, that the whistle was blown and that the Israelis had to very quickly do something about unwinding the situation. So basically, if you want me to just move on, if you'd all been sunk, if the ship had gone down, there would have been a report that an American ship had disappeared in the Eastern Mediterranean. An attack would have begun on Nassau. The world press would probably not have known much about it. You've got to remember that there was a contingent of press on the 6th Fleet, flown in specially, in my view, to report on this. But they were incredibly carefully controlled. They were locked in rooms out of the way. Very few of the press were able to find out. One or two did spot the fact that planes took off to bomb Cairo, but were not allowed to report it because, of course, they relied on American radio connections to get their stuff back to America. When you begin to piece it together as a hypothesis, this is one way of solving scientific problems. You get a hypothesis and then you see how much of the evidence might support it. And then you have to look at all the evidence that contradicts it and see whether that is relevant. I've spent a lot of time doing that. And I think I know where it was. And the story is a horrendous story. Not only that we nearly were led into World War III, but that the world has had Middle East unrest and even world terrorism. You've got to remember that there is a line between, the attacks on the Twin Towers in New York and the Pentagon and so on. There is the factor that these bad people who are carrying out these acts are motivated by an anger over what happened in the 6-Day War. So much stems from it. And I suppose it might even be a final point. If you read the hundreds of books, I'll just switch my thing around. These are some of my books on the 6-Day War here on my desk. Hundreds of the damn things. And any book you pick up on the 6-Day War, bar one or two, will have nothing about this. If they mention the Liberty, it is a passing reference. And yet, in my view, it is the key thing. Through the attack on the Liberty failing and our ability to piece together some of this evidence, we know that something seriously amiss was going on. And we also know that America was involved in it. And so let's keep going because, funnily enough, yesterday, a Palestinian who was just moved into the area near me came to see me and we were talking about this. And he can see the point that if we could actually get this story out into the open more than it has done, we might actually influence international politics and get something moving on the humanitarian front.
Peter, this is Larry Bowen, current president for Liberty Veterans.
Hi, Larry.
I read Operation Cyanide with great interest, but I'm really looking forward to this new book that you've got coming out. I also wanted to thank you on behalf of the entire organization for your continued support and thank you for today's presentation and, just everything that you're doing and have done in the past. We, as an organization, will continue to fight as long as we've got, a breath. We brought our relatives in 2 years ago as members of the organization so that they can carry on. So they can take on positions of authority so that the Liberty Veterans Association can continue. So there will be life after we pass. So, if you're going to continue to write books, you'll have someone else to, follow up with.
Listen, guys, you've got to keep alive for another 25 years.
Anything else or, okay?
Hello, Peter. My name is Dan Brown. I have a brother killed on the ship. I was very young at the time when it happened.
Yeah.
I have a question that I know we were involved with this situation. You brought us, the U.S. involved with the Israel, but you haven't brought up a point. Was the Russians ever in the territory listening also?
Of course, they had, because if you remember, they had trawlers, and so they weren't really trawlers; they were military ships, but they called them trawlers. They were listening to the situation. There is a view, and there's a book sitting on my shelving, which tries to claim that it was the Soviet Union who was trying to cook up all the trouble in the Six-Day War. And in my view, it is completely the reverse of that. I think the Soviet Union did not want a war at that time. They knew, for example, that NASA couldn't win a war, and that they had a lot of military investment in the NASA regime. They'd supplied a lot of planes and other equipment. They were trying to keep a calm on it. There are very interesting bits of counter evidence, which in my view, which I've sort of dismissed, one of which was that the Soviet Union passed intelligence to NASA that was erroneous, claiming that Israel was about to attack Syria, an ally. I have a feeling that might well have been an Israeli black ops operation, that they fed some information through various channels to the Soviets that was passed on to NASA in order to make him even more hyper. But although the Soviet Union was noted for being vocally very, very aggressive, they could not afford in 1967 to have a nuclear war with the West, because they did not have the firepower. And this is one of the reasons why the American military were arguing that we should start a nuclear war in the mid to late 60s, because that would be a bit before Russia had a stronger nuclear power. So although I cover some of the Soviet involvement, I don't consider them to be a major factor, other than that they were there watching and waiting to see what happened.
Hi, Peter. I'm Larry Bowen as well. My dad, you just heard from a minute ago. Question for you is basically in your book and your research, you're looking to find the story and to bring to light the story of Liberty and how it got involved in the entirety of the Six-Day War. Assuming that we could get a voice in Congress or somewhere and the government to actually open this up, look into it deeper, in your mind, what would be the outcome or the goal that you would hope from government involvement looking back into this incident?
I don't think they've got rid of the stuff. I mean, I think my knowledge of British and American intelligence is that they tend to keep stuff locked away, sealed away, but they don't always, they don't often get rid of it completely. So it is there to be found, and a legal. I mean, I don't know how. I know how British government inquiries work, and they have the legal power to put people on oath and jail them if they tell lies, and they have the legal power to make them produce stuff. And I think a congressional inquiry is similar to that. And what needs to happen is this is why they try so hard not to have one, is that a congressional inquiry would demand that the files should be opened. But I think it's there. Just as a little side point, one of my great disappointments when I was doing the original investigation for the documentary is that when we went to interview George Golden, he gave us an interview and he was very cagey to start with. He admitted, he said that he knew for a fact from documents that he'd received that they were intended to be sitting ducks, he called them, I think, or guinea pigs, he said, guinea pigs. You were meant to be guinea pigs. But he had a file of stuff that I think he might have got from McGonigal. And he was on the point of going and getting this stuff and giving it to me because I was quite persuasive. And I came back the next day and he took me aside and he said, my wife was so upset about this, she has asked me to destroy it. And that is a huge disappointment. Whether he did destroy it, I doubt. I hope he didn't. It may still be there somewhere, guys. But there is stuff like that around. I mean, so we may not be totally reliant on getting a congressional inquiry here. There are people who are still keeping quiet about it, even including some of the crew, of what they knew. And the people who are key are the people in the secret spaces who were privy to what signals were being picked up, because you were actually picking up some very interesting stuff, including a message that you were going to be attacked. And of course, McGonigal must have received that message, and he had the power to sail your ship into safer waters, and he did not do it. And why did he not do it? Well, had he been told in advance that if he received any information like that, he had to ignore it, or was it his own decision? I don't know, but it is very interesting, and we need to know more about it.
One more question we have, okay?
Well, my name is Debbie Bradley. My husband is a survivor of the Liberty, and we were married at the time. I would like to ask you, in your investigating and your research and all the people that you've talked to, if you ever ran across a man named Bruce Gentry Blair, who was considered an expert on nuclear for his nuclear missiles, nuclear war. And you've never heard of him?
No, have you got information from him?
He was my first cousin.
Well, then, can you email me with some stuff?
He just died within the last year. He died of a stroke, in the early 70s, just unexpectedly.
But had he some knowledge about the Liberty attack in particular?
And I just thought I would ask you, just for my own curiosity. And I'll send you his obituary is all over.
Do thank you. Look, you saw my email address at the end there.
And I'll send it. You'll find it very interesting.
You'll find, well, that's very interesting. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
Mo, can I just say something to everyone just at the end? People rubbish the book by Anthony Pearson called, I've forgotten his name now. Someone will know what it is. I'm looking for it on my shelf. Anthony Pearson wrote a book a couple of years before Jim Ennis, and it was considered to be not reliable because it was based on 2 articles he wrote for the sex magazine Penthouse. But it is worth reading because he did get to people early on in the day who told him things, including about the Andrew Jackson, which are very, very, well, I'm just telling you that many, many years on, I've found that he was right. And so I rate that book far higher than, for example, Jim Ennis did, who he rather poo-pooed it at the end of his book. But I do think it is worth getting a second-hand copy of. They are around. And if you email me, I'll tell you what it's called if I don't think of it immediately.
Conspiracy theory, right?
Yeah, conspiracy of silence, I think.
Conspiracy.
Yeah.
Okay, again, Peter, thank you so very much on behalf of the crew. This has been a very powerful and enlightening presentation for us, so thank you.